This is Carl. Welcome to the first episode of the PracticeCare podcast. Owners of private healthcare practices have it hard. You're a doctor or a dentist or a specialist in any healthcare field. That's what you went to school for, and that's what you want to do, but you also own a practice, and your practice has a business side. There's accounting and employees, IT, real estate, legal, marketing, and on and on. As the owner, you have to make business decisions. Many of you don't like to, but you know you have to, and I get it. It's not so easy to make a good decision when you're not sure what you're talking about. But what if you knew just enough about something to make an informed decision so you could make it and then get back to doing what you want to do? My goal with the PracticeCare podcast is to hit that just enough level. I'm Carl White. My own experience with the business of healthcare and the success and grind of business ownership runs deep. For me, it started when I was a kid watching my father, who owned a pharmacy in upstate New York. When I was really young, I remember him walking into the house every night at around 9:15, 9:20, the store closed at 9, just dead dog tired from being on his feet all day working. There were 3 steps from the garage where he parked up into the family room where I always was, and watching him walk up those 3 steps was like watching him climb a mountain. He was so tired. As I grew up, I worked in the pharmacy and I watched my dad work with customers and employees, stress over getting new patients, where were they going to come from, win new patients in competitive bidding arrangements, and a bunch of other stuff. I can distinctly remember a day, I can still picture it. I went into his office to ask him about something, and I was just about to start talking, but he looks like he's really concentrating on something. So instead, I walked up to see what he was doing, and he was going through billing statements for patients who were late paying him, and writing on those statements, whatever you can afford. That's the day that I learned about cash flow. Now I say that's the day that I learned, but I was a teenager. What did I really know at the time? But looking back, what I realize now is that what I was doing was watching him build a successful pharmacy day by day. Fast forward, I had just graduated college, I'm still living at home, and at dinner one night, he broaches the topic of me joining him to work in the business. Really gentle. You know, he said, if you ever wanted to come into the business, and I cut him off. I shook my head. Nope, didn't want to hear it, didn't want to think about it. So he stopped talking. I don't even think he finished the sentence. We finished dinner, we looked at each other, kind of awkward, and just moved on. At the time, running a business just didn't click for me. So instead, I went to work for companies, I got my MBA, and I went to work for large healthcare companies for 15 years doing marketing and healthcare. I got to work with doctors and patients from all over the US and Europe. I worked on really cool, innovative products and services for specialty populations like preterm infants, people with end-stage renal disease, spinal cord injured individuals, and others. The products were always complicated and interesting to me. The science and the clinical studies supporting them were also really interesting and dense, really dense. I mean, I had to understand all of it just to be able to market those products effectively. And overall, through that experience of those 15 years, I'd like to think that I learned a couple of things. First, I learned how to do really, really good healthcare marketing, and I think I had a great run. But I also learned that when I'm an employee, I don't get to make the decisions that I think are best for the business or for myself. And while I was there, that learning turned into a feeling, and over time that feeling grew and it festered. And eventually the click that didn't happen for me at dinner with my parents that night happened. And that's when the idea for Market Advisory Group was born. Today I own and run Market Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency. Our mission is to help the independently owned practice stay that way. I firmly believe that the best healthcare happens when it's just you and your patient collaborating on your patient's care, and there's nobody else at the table with their agenda. No hospital, no health system. I know we have to accept that insurance is usually at the table, but we do the best we can. Let me say that this podcast is not exclusively a marketing podcast. Far from it. I'll feature guests from a wide variety of specialties, and we'll also have guests who run their own practices. And each week for about 20 minutes, a guest is going to bring a story, a challenge they faced, how they solved it or didn't, what they learned, and what advice they have for you so you can make a good decision when you face something similar. The stories are going to run the gamut. Physician compensation issues, employment agreements, dealing with your landlord if you happen to lease space, HIPAA, Google, IT, medical malpractice insurance, billing and collections, just to name a few. Let me tell you what this podcast also is not. It is not a do-it-yourself instructional course. You don't have time to do it yourself, and you don't want to do it yourself anyway. Instead, this is real people, real healthcare specialists, real pros, sharing their insights about issues you face and telling you what they've done to help their practices flourish and what to avoid to save you from a flop. They're like you. They've seen a lot and they have lessons to share. In a way, I and my guests are just like you. You love being a healthcare professional. I love doing marketing, and my guests love doing what they do, but we all own businesses. And just like you, we have to make decisions in areas where we don't have a lot of experience. And sometimes that can be pretty unnerving. What do? We look for advice from people we trust. My goal with the PracticeCare podcast is to become a trustworthy source of good business decisions for you. As I wrap up my welcoming episode, I invite you to check back in to hear from professionals who go through the business side of their practice and hear their advice for situations you face. If you've gotten value from my podcast, please follow it and review it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I appreciate you listening and look forward to you coming back for more. Talk with you soon.